What if your healing didn't start with a prescription, but with a decision? What if the breakthrough wasn't outside of you, but buried beneath old patterns, unprocessed emotions, and the belief that you don't have a choice? Today's guest, Sophia Torrini, shows and knows that place very well. Twice she was told that she wouldn't make it. Twice she was written off by the medical system. And twice she chose to believe in something deeper. From being told she had 2 days to live to standing on her own feet, alive, clear, and thriving, Sophia is living proof that the body has an intelligence all on its own. And that when we learn how to work it, not against it, everything changes. Now, a certified clinical EFT practitioner and neurochange consultant trained under Dr. Joe Dispenza, Sophia helps others unlock that same transformation. So whether it's anxiety, chronic illness, or patterns of stress that keep hijacking your calm, her work is about reconnecting you to what's already inside: peace, power, and choice. So if you are ready to shift from survival mode to self-mastery, this conversation will remind you you have the power already. But before we dive into this episode, you already know what time it is. Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast, the safe space where survival mode ends and your healing journey begins. So if you've been pushing through pain, fatigue, bloated, or hormonal chaos, I want you to know your body isn't broken, it's speaking. Welcome to the Good Vibe Studio, Sophia.
Oh, thank you for the wonderful intro, and it's an honor to be on your Good Vibe studio here.
Yes, ma'am. So, Sophia, your story begins with a literal life or death moment. Can you take us back to that turning
Yeah.
point? What was
Uh,
happening in your body, and how did you begin to see yourself and your illness differently?
so I was pretty stressed like everybody else, and I made a wrong decision or a wrong choice. So I had some physical symptoms. And even though I had enough medical knowledge, I agreed to have exploratory surgery. Uh, I challenged it, but they basically said, you did not have enough knowledge, and it was a life and death situation. So I had to accept the surgery, which I did. And then things went sour after that. So there was a turning point where I went unconscious for a couple of days. And then when I recovered from that, my lungs had already collapsed. And I had peritonitis and many other conditions. And pretty much they told me that I don't have enough time to live. And I was okay with it, believe it or not, because my life was so miserable. But something, for whatever reason, what wasn't right, and I did not exit right away. So maybe my health was deteriorating daily. So every day there would be something else wrong. But the 2 days went, and I think probably about day 10, because I was 23 days in the hospital, one of the nurses came to me, and it was her last day on the floor. She was going on vacation, and she was going to change departments, and she said, unless you intervene and research some stuff, you are not coming out alive from here. And at that point, I think was the first turning point, because I realized it's going to be a slow death. So I hadn't died in the first 2 days, and it was going to be a slow process. And I did research some alternative stuff, and that just got me discharged from the hospital with poor health, though. So I am not dead, but now I have all these ailments, which took about 6 months to rebalance. But now I also have a chronic disease that I never had before. And then during that process, thank goodness, they asked me to remove some organs, and I refused. I think I went to 25 department chairs. I spent all my money going from the biggest department chairs you can imagine, either flying or driving, and everybody kept on saying the same thing. We don't know what happened, and it would be best that you remove your organ. And I said, no. And years passed, and I managed the treatment. I managed my health, but I was, not functioning very well. And then at some point, I said, I can't live like this. I did get good treatment at the Mayo, which was very good, but it was a patch. But I'm really, really very grateful because they weren't aggressive, and I got treated like a human being. And they started planting the seed that probably my stress and my emotions had a contribution to this. They didn't kind of throw it out there, but they said I would need to manage my stress. And years went by. I think about 15 years went by, and then I fall into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And then
Okay.
that's when things started clicking. So those 16 years, I am functioning, but I'm sick most of the time.
Yes,
So I
ma'am.
would have, flare ups that would last 3 or 4 weeks and sometimes months, or maybe 3 months in a row. And the answer was always the same. The question was always the same to me. How can a healthy human being overnight be expected to die? There's something wrong in this picture. Which later on I found some of the answers, what happened and what took place. But the opening was Dr. Joe's work, and the books made a lot of sense to me. And
Okay, so before we get into like what you found out was really your thing by doing the work and choosing a path that led you to this breakthrough moment, if you're willing to share, what were some of those physical symptoms that led you to that exploratory surgery?
I
That
just
was
had abdominal pain and a fever. That's
okay.
all I had. So I didn't have something life threatening, but they told me they misdiagnosed me,
Mm,
stating that I had something else, which was interception, it's called. And I don't match the age group. So I challenged that. So that's the twisting of intestines. And if you have that, usually people don't live. So it's about 6 hours, a short span, maybe even less. But I kept on challenging, and I said, I don't match the age group. It's either babies or people in their 90s. And
mm,
I wasn't in that age group. And they said, what do you know? And I said, I work in the field. And it turned out I didn't have it, but they told me before the surgery. So I went to the emergency room and I never went home. So they basically said, you just have a few hours. So they found a surgeon who they woke up in the middle of the night, did the surgery, and now I don't wake up for a
yes, ma'am.
couple of
Okay.
days.
I definitely appreciate you breaking that all down and sharing that story with us. It's 23 days in the hospital, and for me it was that day 10, unless you intervene. It was almost as if it was a reminder that you have some power, some say so
Yes.
in what is actually happening. But I really like the fact that you were able to see that it came back to stress and emotions that truly needed to be addressed. And just out of my own curiosity, because so many women that listen to this podcast or will hear this podcast eventually suffer with flare-ups. It could be
Mhm.
caused by endometriosis, adenomyosis, and they're in this spout or this time frame of just chronic pain that makes them not want to move, get up, make anything happen. And you said sometimes you'll be in a flare for 3 to 4 weeks. What was that mindset for you that said, you know what? I need to shift some things if I'm going to survive this flare up that started one day, but then eventually lasted for 3 weeks straight, sometimes 4 weeks. What was that mindset for you, Sophia, to push through?
Well, that I can't live with that pain, but I'll go back to the question. I always believe that the body cannot get sick overnight. And so something made it sick. so fast. Someone super healthy, because I was very healthy. I was a runner. I was very cautious with what I ate. I didn't drink. Then the second statement that would come to my mind, whatever created this, because I didn't know what it was in those days, there had to be somewhere I could return to my normal. And that's why I was always exploring, before I ended up finding solutions, conservative treatments. I was very careful. So even if they were to prescribe something, they tried to prescribe immunosuppressants, and I said, over my dead body. I just would refuse. And then I would go to natural supplements. And it was a patchwork, because the underlying cause here was stress and a traumatic imprint, which I had not cleared. And at the time, I had no clue. But during those days, I knew that if I followed their treatments, the aggressive treatments, I'm going to end up worse, because I saw how worse I got in the hospital. Someone healthy, and then, before 24 hours are out, you're just unconscious. So, I mean, 7 hours in, and I was gone.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I remember you telling me, like, your partner at the time, when you were going through this, said, "Have you ever thought about how this will affect me if you were gone?" That was a pivotal moment for you. What do you feel like really shifted
Well,
during that?
that's the second time. So when later on, I still have these flare ups, and now the treatments that I'm getting for the flare ups are not working, and I'm deteriorating. So it wasn't imminent death, but it would have been maybe 6 months, a year, two, something like that. And then when he said that to me, that was really a turning point, because I realized I was so caught up in my own symptoms. I didn't realize someone who cared for me so deeply would be hurt and affected. And that was the key turning point. I have to turn this around.
Mm, I have to turn this around. And what did it look like about your healing journey? What did it teach you about the role of emotions and stress and belief systems in your body to be able to thrive?
Well, the core cause of the conditions, obviously, there was a medical intervention that caused more damage, which I'll
Mhm.
discuss in a second. But the underlying cause of the original symptoms was emotional stress, and not processing and feeling my emotions, completely disconnected from my body, all mental. And now I have to find a way to learn to sit with those emotions, which was very terrifying, and certain memories coming up, and reprocessing now this hospital experience. And there was also a turning point, because the nurse who told me was from the establishment, yet everybody told me in the medical establishment nothing can be done. But I trusted the nurse, because they always put the nurses as if they don't know anything. And she came out of nowhere, literally. I mean, she was working on the floor, and she was taking care of me, but we didn't have a relationship. And then she decided to approach me. So the fact that she told me that, and she was risking her job. What if I went and said, "Oh, this nurse said this to me"? I didn't say anything to anybody. And then I started with a plan and researching. So what did it look like? Well, it wasn't easy for me, I have to say, because I was always in my head. And the books were great to read, but you actually need a somatic modality to heal. And
Mhm.
that's when I picked up EFT. I think I needed both. There's no way I could have healed just by reading the books or meditating or going to a retreat, which I went. I had to overcome my body during meditation that was fidgeting, and all the fears that were coming up, and all the anxiety from those 23 days, because I had just blocked them out of awareness, complete out of awareness. And then as the emotions were coming up, I was either getting angry or I was getting anxious. And then the anxiety of death that was already suppressed in the body was coming up. And I want to address this because most people are not aware of this part. Every time the limbic brain produces an emotion, chemistry gets produced and it stays in the body. Unless we feel that emotion, it never leaves the body. And most people say, well, I don't think about it anymore. I don't care about it anymore. Yet, if you were to ask them to imagine what happened at that time, they get a knot in their stomach or something. So, energy can never be created or destroyed, can only be transmuted. And it is all those emotions that we never learn to process by feeling them in the body. Because a lot of people say, oh, I feel the anger. Yeah, I felt my anger was in my head. I would talk about it, but I would never feel the bodily sensation. And all of that anger had to clear. And that was very uncomfortable to go and revisit all those memories plus some other memories. And little by little, I would have these glimpses of feeling happy like for 10 minutes. And then there was something that I worked on from my childhood. And I was happy the whole night. And I had not been happy. It was like I released this emotion and a high came in. And I started putting things together. I also started seeing once I would release the emotion, I had a different perception of the event. It wasn't exactly what I had perceived. So we see the world the way we are. And when there's a low frequency emotion, we're not seeing the world correctly. We have a story, and that story may not be true.
Our story may not be true.
No. Or the explanation of the events are not actually accurate.
Okay. So our story is true, but the explanation.
No, both could be not true.
All right. So our stories might not be true, nor the explanations.
You think someone did something because of that, and when you clear the emotion, remember another aspect, and now that story is no longer valid. Or you always think there's cause and effect. I thought, the doctors always think this is going to cause this. In my case, there was no direct cause and effect with what they were saying. There was a cause and effect when there's an external surgical intervention, the body feels violated, which is why I started having health challenge. But the fact that they gave me, before the surgery, they told me I may not live. Under German New Medicine or meta consciousness, when if you believe and surrender to it, which I did believe and surrender to it, now the body is going to cause physical issues. So I didn't have any pneumonia going in, but now I have full-blown pneumonia 3 hours later, and then my lungs are collapsed. Why? Because all conditions in the body are a biological track. And I believed in that statement that they told me.
Gotcha. That was powerful. Like it'll kind of make you even want to second guess even going through or whatever it is that you're about to experience, and to plant that seed and then go unconscious. I can only imagine what the body was feeling, because the body doesn't know what's real and what's not real in regards to like what you're consuming and what's being said. But I want to first say, if y'all are still listening to this conversation with us, clear the emotion in the comments. Clear the emotion. I think that was a big thing that I got out of those insights that you just shared, Sophia. And I feel like that's a big thing, because if we don't feel it, we won't be able to allow it to get out of us. And when we have those stored emotions in us, that's when sickness comes, illness comes, when there's a lot of chaos happening inside of the body. And so you want to feel it, so then you can clear it. And I think that was a big thing for me, based on your story. And I appreciate you sharing and breaking those things down, because as someone who's worked in the hospital, systems for about 30 years, you had to go on this unconventional path. And you talked about EFT, and you talked about somatic healing, neuroplasticity. I think we also discussed that before. They all created these big shifts for you. Why do you think that this work is so often overlooked in traditional medicine and not something we typically hear about in hospital settings and medical settings, and ways that people can pursue or bring this comprehensive approach to health and healing?
I think most doctors have a good desire to help their patients. Most, not all of them, but most. But they are so busy. So the powers to be, first of all, doesn't always give them the clinical trials as they are. So they don't get always the full story to review the clinical trial. My degree is in epidemiology, and I do know a lot of times these clinical trials now are not done properly. But what is the biggest reason? People don't like change, and we've been hardwired to believe that the body doesn't have a say. But the body has its own intuition and its own consciousness. And at the end of the day, it wants to help you. And I'm going to give a simple example. So, which was a combination both from the external world. So, the external world will cause, if we remove the surgery, because surgery is really dramatic, but let's say medications or chemicals can lower your frequency about 30%. Most of it is emotion. So while I was in the hospital, I was getting very high doses of cortisone. And my vision was 20/20 at the time. And all of a sudden, I started not seeing. Now, cortisone will affect and damage your vision, but it didn't explain why it would continue to deteriorate. So I started clearing it recently because I didn't know too much of German new medicine in detail. So I started just experimenting 2 years ago by tapping, because there's a research that was done that if you tap, you can reverse your eye vision. So I wear contacts. So this eye was +5, and this was close to 275. So it came down to 450, 425. I was able to bring it down, and this one to 125. And then my partner passed away, so it went back up. And then I now decided to really start tapping on the memories, and I'm going somewhere with it. So it dropped now to 325, and it's stable at 325, and this is 2. But why did the body decide to blur my vision? So just imagine there's a hurricane coming, right? And you have windows. You close the shutters so the water and the damage doesn't come in. So in my case, the body, to protect me, and this was a hard concept for me to grasp, the body to protect me, to not be seeing what was happening on that floor, and to be picking information constantly about death, because everybody who was coming in my room was getting worse by the day because I was sharing a hospital room. The body made the decision to blur things so the information can't come in. And I was angry for a while, and I started clearing it. But now that I'm clearing the memories and I'm telling to the body it's safe for me to see and process those and feel those, the vision is restoring.
Thank you. That was nice. My biggest takeaway was your body wants to help you. That's a big thing, because sometimes we can feel like our bodies are against us. We're victims to these chronic conditions, our body having its way, and we can't find a way to get control back. And it's far from the truth. that your body is against you. Your body actually wants to
Right.
help.
And let's say I did allow this emotional trauma that I was seeing. The body has so much energy, so it's budgeting. That's the
Mm.
best way to imagine it, as if it's an energetic bank account. So if it got more traumatic memories to process, something else in my body would have to give. So it found the least part to block by blurring my vision. And, I could have made a decision. I want to live with context the rest of my life, but it was bothering me. So I said, let's try this experiment. If I go back and start finding these memories, will the eyesight start improving? And it is.
How important is it to get guidance through these types of methods of healing? Like I understand, like, did you know you needed to dig a little deeper and identify what was being blocked, or did something kind of guide you with saying, hey, it might be this, it might be that, to know that that would help with your vision
Okay.
and understanding what was blocked?
So I started with the preface that all diseases are lowering of frequency.
Okay.
So that was my preface. And then I started researching modalities that address it and address which body parts. So most average people just do the tapping. I wanted to see, why is this particular organ? And I'll give you a classic example that might be helpful for some people. And it's based on meta consciousness. So a right-handed woman who has a baby, she wants to keep her right hand active. So she carries her baby with this hand and she brings it on her chest, on my right chest. So if there's a threat in the family, which is the left side, or I'm sorry, I made a mistake. If there's a threat in the family or with the child, it's called a nest conflict, right? Because her nest is being violated. What's going to happen to her, because she carries the baby like this, she's going to get right breast cancer. So the body has lots of wisdom. Now, if you know that and you clear it, you don't have to get it. So these tools are very helpful when you start seeing the symptoms. Okay, let me see which program is running here, and let me clear it so I don't have to end up there. Like in my case, if I didn't clear this pattern with the eyes, every year my vision was going to get worse, which is what happened. I mean, it didn't go to +5 overnight, but every year. And what does the medical establishment say? Well, as you age, your eyes get worse. And I said, no, I'm not buying into that, and I can reverse it. Took me a while.
But you did it.
Yes.
You did it because you had a different belief, and that
Yeah.
belief put you on a path to make sure you went after the things that you knew you wanted to believe and trusted to believe that it was going to work for you and shift some things. And I think that's what is powerful. And I feel like a lot of times, Sophia, we underestimate the power of belief. We underestimate the power of thoughts. We underestimate the power of feelings. We underestimate how they impact our behaviors and shape our life and shape what we experience on a regular basis. And I kind of call that like mindset, thoughts, feelings, beliefs. And when you start to feed certain beliefs, thoughts, and feelings, and if you feed it, you feel it, whatever the case may be, you're creating a different perspective or a different reality for yourself. And it could be something that's helpful, it could be something that's healthy, it could be something that's moving you forward, or it could be something that's stunting your growth, that's keeping things stagnant in your body, that's keeping you in a place that's causing bloating, pelvic pain, decrease in eyesight and vision, heart palpitations, anxiety, overwhelm, depression, low self-esteem. It's so many things that we can call that out to, that all come back to your thoughts, your feelings, and your beliefs, and what you're doing to them. And so I'm really grateful that you kind of got to that point of the conversation, so we can kind of hit on that point, because it's so very valuable, because that's where everything starts to shift for you, either for the good or for the bad. And so, y'all, talking about the shifts, I want to let y'all in on something. All right. So, if you've been stuck in cycles of pelvic pain, fatigue, bloating, survival mode, it's not because you're weak. It's because your body is asking for a reset, some attention, some love, some affection. In my upcoming live event, 5 costly mistakes keeping you stuck in pelvic pain and fatigue, and how to break free naturally, I'll reveal the exact shifts that helped move you forward from the hormonal chaos and inflammation into clarity, energy, and calm. This is where the guessing ends and your healing truly begins. So head to the show notes and register for the upcoming training. So, Sophia, let's talk about EFT, because we really didn't break it down for people
Okay.
just yet. So, for listeners that's new to it, how does emotional freedom technique actually work in the body and the nervous system?
Okay. So clinical EFT is evidence-based EFT. And what is EFT? It's a combination of cognitive psychotherapy and tapping on the body's meridians, which is doing acupuncture without needles, to release energy that's believed to be stored in the body. So, what causes disease is a lowering of frequency. Let's address what happens with emotions. So, emotions, when they're not processed, we said that the limbic brain produces chemistry, which is information for you. Your body's alerting you or wants to give you information. And if you don't listen to it, it's going to store it because you have to process the information. It's like the computer or your car giving you an alarm. So over a period of time, if you keep on not listening to it, it gets stored and it becomes more dense. Now, cells, in order to communicate, need a signal. But when you have this energetic block or density, as it's called, the signal gets distorted. And then the cells now produce bad copies. It's like having a bad photocopy and it's getting distorted. Your ink is not strong enough, and where there's an A, half of it shows up and it appears like a C, right? So the the message is getting coded wrong. All emotions have a copy in the brain based by type of emotion. So, and then the second copy is stored in the body depending on the organ. I think Laviolette, 1988, proved that. And then there's Candace Pert, who wrote that the body is the subconscious mind, and she wrote the book Molecules of Emotions. So now when we have low frequency in the body and we get stuck, you get these bodily sensations. And then eventually, if they're low frequency emotions, you're constantly activating your parasympathetic nervous system. There is no healing and repair. The alarm is constantly on. Now, why does tapping help? First of all, if there was a tiger here, I mean, you said before correctly, the body doesn't know the difference between a real life experience or an experience created by thought alone. So let's assume there's a tiger right here. Well, if there was a tiger right here, I wouldn't be physically tapping. So the act of tapping gives the body a message that you're safe, and it starts changing your brain waves. Now, also by verbalizing, you get the personality to express what they didn't express. So maybe as a child, you witnessed something and you could not take action because something worse would have happened to you. So let's say you wanted to speak up, but you saw a violent crime. Well, obviously, as a 5-year-old, if you spoke up and there's a violent crime, you would have been taken out, possibly, right? So that information got stored. So now you're tapping, you're expressing all your fear, and it's starting to come out. And by putting your awareness and breathing and feeling on it, the energy is moving. So most people, after a few sessions, actually feel the energy either goes up or down or out the arms, and the energy starts leaving. And now the body feels, okay, you're listening, and the body now starts repressed. Well, this incident happened at 5 and it got stuck. You remember those records where you put the needle and it got stuck and it's playing the same recording? So the body gets stuck. Well, she's 5 years old. I have to, every time there's a similar stimulus, I have to tell her that she needs to tighten up because there's danger. As you're clearing it and you're speaking to your body, now it realizes you're no longer 5. And even more, you did something brilliant, the best you could given the circumstances, and you survived it. And now, instead of being victimized, you actually survived it. So now you're reframing those experiences and the body's feeling happier. And that energy of fear, or whatever it was, which is low frequency, starts leaving. And let's address why is it important for the low frequency emotions to leave. So we know from Dr. David Hawkins, the maps of consciousness. And anything below 200 on the maps of consciousness, which is measured in a logarithmic scale. And what does it mean? So it's 20 to the power of 10, let's say. So anything less than 200 is life depleting. So when you're carrying all these fears, all these angers, all these prides, all these shame, the body can't heal. And now you are the one who's transmuting it and changing it. And you asked me before, do you need a guide or how did I get there? So in the beginning, for certain things, you would need someone to train you. If it's not traumatic memories, you're trained to do it by yourself. So you're not dependent like in psychotherapy. Now, we don't advise traumatic memories to be done by yourself because, number one, you're going to abreact, and the mind that created the problem cannot see the solution. So you need someone to hold space for you and to be able to reframe, because when you're traumatized, you like to replay the traumas in your mind, and that's the worst thing you can do for yourself because you're just hardwiring that trauma in your body, and we don't want that. So did I start by myself? I started by myself, but I had an interest to go further than tapping because I needed more answers.
Yes, ma'am. My biggest thing is I survived it. Y'all drop that in the comments if that resonated with you and you're now able to see something in your past that you now can see as no longer a victim, but a victor, and knowing that you have survived it. So drop that in the comments. I survived it. I survived it. That was nice. Thank you, Sophia. I appreciate you walking us through that, giving us some insights on EFT, emotional freedom technique, and then also knowing that you needed a little bit more. And you kind of talked about having this loop, right? This getting stuck in a loop. Or emotional loop, stress pattern. Can you talk about some of the first steps, or maybe just the first step to actually getting out of that stress pattern, that emotional loop? If someone's living in it, what can they how could they
So they
recognize?
can take a couple of breaths to slow down, but the physical act of tapping will break the loop if you're willing to be honest and connect with the body. So most of us, including me sometimes, the thought comes, this emotion will never leave me. Now, we do know from a neuroscience point of view that the chemical onset of the emotion is only 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Now that you're going to ask me, how long then fear lasts for a day? Well, what reloops it is the analysis of that emotion and the commentary. So we have not been learned to feel it. So what happens is the knot comes. Well, there was a thought that created the fear, and now you have this anxiety, and now you keep on putting more words. So the more thoughts you have, the more you're going to get neurotransmitters and neuropeptides that are going to activate more hormones, and they're going to produce more chemistry. So that's what keeps the loop going. The constant commentary of the emotion instead of observing it and feeling it, which is really hard for people to grasp. And it took me a long time, because immediately the body, you want to say, it's because of that person, it's because of this. And if we learned how to just feel it for the 90 seconds, 2 minutes, we would survive it. And there wouldn't be all this residue that gets. And when I was grieving, of course I was looping. This wasn't fair, and it shouldn't have happened. And now that produced more grief, and now it would lower my frequency, and then I would get angry, and I wasn't getting out of the loop.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. The knot, then the thoughts. Then that starts activating the hormones, and then it starts creating that chemistry and the energy that's happening in the body that starts to cause things. And if you can just start the tapping, it'd help break that loop. Thank you, Miss Sophia, for breaking that down. I feel like we can get in these spaces and places where the emotions seem to truly overwhelm. You're in the feeling, and you're trying to figure out how to get out of it. And so I can understand the tapping. I feel like the tapping brings you to presence. The tapping allows you to say, hey, come back to yourself. The tapping allows you to say, hey, I need to tap into you on the inside. What can I say to myself to give it some compassion, to give it some love, to give it some comfort right now, where it's starting to feel a little bit overwhelming, and you want to get some of that power back. And it's as simple as the tapping, and the tapping can do so much to help the body, to help the brain, to help the body, to help the overall person who is in need right now. And I really appreciate that. But you first said starting with the breath. And when you get that breath, I think it's always with deep breathing that we realize how much power we still have, and how we're still alive in this thing that feels like it might be outside of us. And it starts with the within that breathing. So I don't know if anybody else needed it. I know I needed that reminder myself on figuring out how to feel safe again when the knot comes up, the thought of wanting to, start to feel a little nauseous and just not settled, and realizing, how do I get out of this? I'm starting to feel that temperature rise in my body because there are things happening that I can't control. And it's just like, how do you get back in control? And so I appreciate you breaking that down for us, Sophia, and reminding us still that we can survive it as long as
May I add something here? So you also want the part to bring online, the part that was never spoken and was unheard, that survived. So there was a part of you that did survive, but it's like frozen, and it needs to speak how challenging it was that it survived. And now I want to go back to the breath. So a lot of people just hear the word, just a deep breath. If it's a shallow, deep breath, it's not going to get you very far. So we want the breath, the spirit breath comes all the way down to the belly. And there's a story why the Buddha has a big belly, not because he's fat, he's trying to teach diaphragmatic breathing. So the act of shifting the diaphragm calms the body down. And it's considered spirit breath, our true energetic breath when we do that. And you can't be in so much danger when you do that breath. And it gives you a little gap to space out your thoughts. which is something that we want. Very good. And a lot of times when we have the bodily sensations, as you mentioned before, number one, we don't like it. Number two, we're angry at the body. But what if this is an alarm system? And instead of saying, okay, I don't know what it is that you're saying. Yes, I do want you to go away, but for a second or for 2 minutes, I'm going to tap. I want to hear what the alarm system is all about. Now your body is going to start working with you instead of you being an enemy with the body. So when I started my healing, I was angry and I wasn't going anywhere because the belief was the body was failing me. And sometimes the signals are not coming right because there were too many alarms. But as you clear the signals, then the body's going to speak. I'll give you a simple example. You bought a car, and you know when the gas show, the little thing on your dashboard, the needle is low, you need gas. But you got the car and you never service it. And you get alarms here and there and everywhere. And then one day the needle says you have no gas, but the gas is full. Because why? All the messages have been convoluted. There's so many alarms that the bodies you haven't been hearing may give you the wires are getting crossed here. So you have to fix the errors or the alarms that the body is giving to you, hopefully one at a time. And now you know what the body is trying to tell you. And you brought, pelvic stuff and digestive. So digestion depends on which part of the coin is. It's something in your reality you can't digest.
Mm.
Most of the time it's related to anger. So if it's constipation, you ate it, you digested it, but you can't let it go. So now it's rotting in you and you're bloating because you're so angry you can't let it go. It was so unfair. Whatever I digested from this reality is completely unfair. Diarrhea is the opposite. I got this information. I'm not willing to listen to it. I'm going to push it out of my system because I am not ready to process. And it's not what the reality is telling me. So the person's going to have diarrhea. And every symptom is associated with something. So lungs are usually, you got a threat for life. Why did everybody had lung issues during COVID? Because they were told your life is at threat.
Got you. So let's talk about those. You broke down digestive issues. What about those with fibroids, endometriosis, adenomyosis, PCOS? What's happening in their bodies potentially that's not allowing them to, really thrive the way they would want to in regards to the potential emotional
So usually it's again a signal, usually with the fibroids in those areas, and especially if there's an increase, it's wanting something that you couldn't have in a relationship, perhaps a child. And so now the body is growing it for you, but it actually is in the healing phase, which is a good thing. And most people have a hard time grasping it. And if you clear that, then the tumor or that will start. I don't remember them all off my head, but in German medicine or meta consciousness, you can, find a practitioner, they'll give you the specific. And then now it's going to be reduced. So a lot of times when something is growing, even though medicine considers it as a tumor or cancer, the body's overcompensating for something. And then you can reverse it and heal it by clearing whatever it is. If it's fibroids, it's related with a partner or wanting to have a child, if I remember well, or not being able to have a child with that person, which is why something is growing in that area. And everything can, from my experience, the majority of things can be reversed as long as you find, it's called a biological track in German new medicine. Just like a car, everything that's wrong will give you an error code. So the body does the same thing.
Okay.
And certain things, though, we get because we believed into them. So I'll give you an example. Um, I went through menopause the first time when I was in the hospital because my weight went down to 93 pounds. I'm 120, so that's a significant loss. Uh, After I put on the weight, the menopause, but I did go through full blown menopause and it was a completely nightmare. So now, when it came time to go to menopause, I remembered how horrific it was. And I started realizing these are belief systems. And I said to myself, there is no way I'm going to go through that horrific menopause. And I had the mood swings and the hot and colds. And so I said, that's a belief system. So I had started with uh, some hormones. And then I said, no, I made a decision. I'm going to go cold turkey. To make a long story short, I went through menopause with no symptoms the second time around because I believed it was a program. I didn't
Mm.
get the mood swings. Did my hormones drop? Yeah, they did, but I didn't get it because I removed the idea that I have to get the hot and cold and all the stuff. So I didn't go through none of it. The first time, even though it was unconscious, because that's what I knew in the medical model, and the body knows if you drop your weight, it's going to change your hormones. So I bought it, I believed it, I went through full blown menopause for 3 months, and it was on top of being sick. Now I'm dealing with menopause in my early 40s.
Yes, ma'am. But I definitely appreciate you breaking down fibroids and that relationship longing and what that could potentially look like in an emotional state for those listening to the podcast, what it could be. And I've definitely heard of some unprocessed trauma or stored up emotions that could kind of lead to fibroids. And I was just curious about like the endometriosis or the adenomyosis with that pelvic pain and these cysts because it's such a whole body disease. And I know, a lot of the root cause is inflammation, but inflammation also, is triggered by stress and unprocessed emotions, as well as, the food that we can eat and the
Mhm.
lack of movement as well. And so the biological error track will help give that code to what it potentially could be in regards to those with endometriosis and adenomyosis, because I know, and PCOS, because I know so many people have different experiences, with it and how the body responds to it. So it kind of like piqued my curiosity to wondering if there are some themes within the emotions that can go underneath a certain umbrella within these chronic conditions to better understand what areas we could probably tap into or
Yes.
go a little bit deeper in regards to our healing journeys and what we need to do and show up for ourselves. So
Yeah, I can look it up afterwards and see if I can find some information. But I just had a woman with kidney stones,
mhm.
and it was a kidney stones. One of the patterns is fear of being displaced.
Mm.
So in this case, her son, was going to move in with the daughter in law with the baby, and they were going to have another one. So they were getting displaced in their own home. So she got kidney stones. So we started clearing them, and then it moved to the bladder. And there was a conflict now with the husband. So the bladder is about marking your territory. So all of these biological tracks is based on our old brain that we have. So she couldn't mark her territory. She didn't know if this is going to be her home to mark her territory. She was going to leave because now there's a conflict with the partner. Am I going to stay with him or not? Once both were resolved, the kidney stones passed.
Mm.
So the key here is with the biological track is once you make the association and the emotion is released, but you have to have the cognitive shift, because the book can say anything you want and it's not always perfect to the T. It just gives you the overall umbrella, because you could be displaced from your home for something else. You could have been an immigrant, let's say, and the government is saying you need to move out. Okay, so it's fear of displacement. So it gives you just a generic. It doesn't give you an. But in this case, I knew she had mentioned the children, the son coming in. So therefore, it didn't even take a week. Now, I want to address something about reality creation. So first, there's your intuition, and then there's the emotion. Most of us, including myself, we don't catch it there. Then there's something that happens in the outer world. So there's something that's being shown. And if you don't catch it, so she had this conflict in the outer world. She didn't catch it. She didn't process it. She blocked it because she thought, well, the conscious mind kind of said, well, it's my son. I'm going to help. But there was a part of her that felt, this is not a good time in my life. I have all these challenges, having now 3 people plus an extra baby coming in my home. So then it hit her body. Now, in my case, before I got sick, I didn't catch it on the intuition and emotion, but around me, there were people, some of my friends were constantly getting sick with similar stuff that I ended up having. So the outer world was showing me, you're on the wrong track here. You need to do something. But obviously, I didn't catch it. I ended up in survival, made a wrong choice. And now I got all the challenges that everybody else did. Because in survival, you never make the right decision. Why? Because your neocortex is not working very well. And your frontal lobe, which is the CEO of your brain, is not making the proper decisions. It's not using the whole landscape because you're in survival and there's not a lot of blood flow going. It's only going for you to survive.
Thank you for that. So I got the intuition, the emotion, then the outer world conflict, and then survival. And it's used.
No, and then yourself. It hits you.
Okay.
It hits you. It hits the body. So by the time you get disease, you've already missed all the other 3.
Mm. And I think that's where we typically, and I don't know for anybody else, I can definitely speak for myself. I feel like once the diagnosis comes, then it's like, oh, what's happening? Now I want to start figuring out, I call them now lifestyle disruptors. Now, what lifestyle disruptors really led me to this? What was the root cause of that? And it was like, I had never heard of endometriosis at stage 4. It was 4-hour surgery that led to that. I never heard of adenomyosis that they found in the left side of my pelvic area. I had never heard of PCOS yet. I saw the unwanted facial hair in my family and several family members that I just thought was normal. The irregular periods miss, I thought was just normal. Or, you might be stressed, or maybe it was something you ate, or maybe what you're going through in life is delaying your cycle. Like, things were always a way to find to be normalized growing up and navigating like womanhood, women's health, and different things. And so when my body finally said, enough is enough, and I was losing my strength and power through the pain, and I just couldn't get anywhere else from it. It was like, what is happening to me? And that's what started the journey of figuring out what was going on the inside. And while it might have started with the medical field and trying to get an answer for it, to get the diagnosis, it was like, okay, well, where these things come from? What leads to this? What are those root causes? What are those lifestyle disruptors that could have possibly triggered or led to these things happening? And the more conversations I have with people on the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast, and the more I see people sharing their journeys on social media or through blogs, or just posts, or even in conversations and being in spaces and what they've experienced, there's so much that comes back down to emotions and stress and eating, and the eating goes right back to the emotions and the relationship that you even have with foods that also turn around and come back to that same type of energy. What is that energy you're getting from those foods, and then the type of movement you're doing or the lack thereof. And so, like, I call it my M to the third degree healing empowerment formula, and I could just see how so much of this kind of resonates, Sophia. And it's like, no matter how many conversations you have with people about holistic healing or natural ways of truly finding a way to heal your body, it's really not as complicated as you think it would be, because we've grown accustomed to things supposedly being so complicated
Mm-hmm.
and specialized that you don't even realize that most of the power is already within you to help you in the most impactful way. And I think when you really got to get back to tapping into your best self, you know what I mean? It really changes your life, and it's no more a game with this thing called life or with your body. It's really tapping into who you really are at the core and what have you suppressed that needs to be addressed. And I love, it was something else that you said that really resonated, and it was about your thoughts and your mind and what you once believed, and how it might not really be as true as what you thought it was,
Mm-hmm.
because you are in a survival mode, and you had to be in survival mode for so long that is how you're processing what you might be seeing right now in reality. And it's not even survival, it might actually be true safety, and you're so um stuck in a space of survival that you're unable to truly process what might really be happening in front of you. And that could be a totally different experience had you shifted that lens or felt those emotions and found a way to get them out or tap into that. And so I'm really happy that we've been, navigating this conversation, and hopefully it's resonated for the right one or ones that are hearing this, because you talked about it. There's a new collective forming. People
Mm-hmm.
are waking up. They're seeking more. They're asking better questions. What do you want that listener to know who's just beginning this journey?
No matter where you're at or whatever you think has created the situation, there's always another reality. And the mind that created it cannot see solutions. When you're in survival, there's not a chance that you're going to be seeing solutions. And we do know from a few Nobel Prizes, the double slit, the double slit quantum eraser, and the 2022 Nobel Prize on non-locality, that there's more than one reality. And it gets rendered as we go along. That was the 2022. And we also have the multiverse theory, which there's more information coming. And whoever created us, source that created us enough in a way that we could be resourceful and the body can heal. The body cannot be, or the condition cannot be just isolated, right? Why? Because we have the triune brain, which means we have three brains. The neocortex, which is the seat of your consciousness, the limbic brain, which is the emotional brain, and that's where your autonomic nervous system lives. That's why the emotions are key. It's in your limbic brain. And then we have the cerebellum. So, all of those three parts, your thinking, your emotional state, and your action, has to take place. And that's how healing takes place. And we do have the answers, and it is a little bit of a process, but it's not an impossible process. And there's no one who's excluded. Everyone biologically is made the same. And you've turned your story around, and from without you having to tell me, from what I heard, there probably was a lot of challenges growing up. And from the PCOS, from the little I remember, or at least the facial hair, how you got treated as a female, because that's when that hormone is going to get activated for you to have more testosterone. So you're a female, and you also brought up the pelvic floor, which is where the feminine power is. So for whatever reason, either that area got violated or suppressed.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't have to tell me, it's just from the line of work.
No, I just appreciate you navigating that and really breaking it down based on what you remember from the your learnings, your
Yeah.
teachings, your education, your experiences, and how you've been able to help other people. And but in which you broke down to prior to was I wrote it down. It was thinking, emotions, and your actions. I was like, oh, that's the T. That's the T right there, Sophia. And I was like, okay, I could see how the thinking, the emotions, and the actions definitely align, and how people are. And it's something else we kind of talked about before too. And then we'll get into the vitality sparks round. We've talked about this before on our call, and it was people don't realize that they have choices. How
Mhm.
can we start to reclaim our power, especially when we feel stuck, scared, or unsupported?
Well, first of all, we have to know that there could be more than the two choices that are usually given to us, and also see who's offering those choices. So, if it's the establishment, as I said, the powers that be, not necessarily the doctors, but the powers at be, have put us either this or that. Everything in this reality seems to be like a duality. And a lot of times, if you check with your body, or you can calm down, which is not easy in the beginning, you will find another choice. And your body, and especially your heart, that's not an easy one. But sometimes, if you can go into the heart knows there's no choice with the heart. It's the mind that gives the dual. But there's a few times, and everyone has had that experience, that they know something's happening, and they absolutely know something's happening. It could be positive, and that's what actually happens. So if you can lock into your heart, and there's a whole institute called the Heart Math Institute that teaches you how to do that, you will get your third or fourth choice that's out there that you may not be aware of.
Yes, ma'am. So there's more than two choices. We always feel like we have two choices, but we need to really check in with our body because the
Mhm.
heart knows.
That's correct. There
Heart
is
knows.
no this or that. It's only one thing with the heart. So you get the clearest answer. It's like when I made a choice to get off my meds. I
Mm.
just knew that was the right choice. I stopped the thinking, well, if I get off, I'm going to have these side effects, and if I don't get off, it's going to be this. So the mind is what keeps you in the loop, the hamster wheel, because it doesn't have information. What we need to address, the mind only gets information from the past.
Mm.
The mind is an artifact of the past. So it's not going to get you new information unless you start educating yourself to get new information, to get new choices. And that's where education and some of these modalities and the tools help. But the mind is an artifact of the past. So if your experiences were limited, you're going to get limited answers.
Thank you, Sophia. All right, let's go ahead and get into the vitality sparks. This round is about quick, soulful questions that are truly designed to leave us energized, inspired, but most importantly, ready to reflect. All right, you ready?
Mhm.
All right, here we go. Number one belief you had to let go of to truly heal.
Uh, that you needed medicine to heal.
What's something your body told you that your brain tried to ignore?
The body told me that I was safe, and my mind was telling me otherwise certain times.
Mm, okay. What does it feel like to have peace in your nervous system?
It's a calmness and a desire to be creative a lot of times, and as a side effect, you enjoy being around people and being more of service when you're in peace. So it ripples out after you're in that peaceful state, and the mind chatter is out.
Yes, ma'am. What's a mantra or phrase you say to yourself in hard moments?
All possibilities exist in the now, and in my house are many mansions. Let me prepare one for you, which means there's many realities you can be into.
That was a good one. I didn't get to write all the way down, but it's quick, so I'll keep it going. Finish this sentence. When I remembered I had the power to blank, I finally blank.
When I remember I had the power to choose differently and open up my heart, my reality completely changed with more love.
Go ahead, Sophia. All right, last two questions. Give some advice to the girl dads, the father figures, the role models, the partners, the spouses of those dealing with pelvic pain, bloating, fatigue, infertility issues, heavy bleeding, endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids. How could they be more part of the conversation, the support system for those of us that are experiencing those types of symptoms?
So, till we find what the biological track is, the first thing they can do is start breathing in that body part. They can't do it for long in the beginning, and be quiet and maybe pick one symptom with neutrality and no judgment and ask it, what message does it have for me today?
Hmm.
And also love it and knowing it's protecting you from something else. I know the pain is there, but it's getting stuck there because if it went somewhere else, maybe you'd have worse issues.
Hmm.
Now, the best thing to do with abdominal and pelvic stuff is always breathe in there and keep on repeating, I am safe. We tighten up because that's where your root chakra is. And if you're tight up there and you're breathing above, you're constantly not feeling safe. Now, if they're open to do breath work and tapping, obviously that will help. And then if they need more help, we can find out what the biological track is.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Thank you for that. If you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would it be and what would you all eat?
Historical figure. I would use a spiritual figure. I would like to have a chat with Saint Germain.
And what are y'all eating?
And what are we all eating? Probably some very healthy fruits and vegetables.
Okay. So let everybody know where they can find you, Sophia, and
Yes.
connect with you.
So they can find me on my website, Tap Into Your Best Self, and all social media with the same handle, with an exception of Facebook, which is tapintourbestself.org. And they can have a half an hour complimentary session with me, or I offer a 75-minute masterclass before I teach the neuroscience course that was designed by Dr. Dispenza. So either way, they get two things for free, either 75 minutes or 30 minutes. And I'd be happy to help them. And if it's not a right fit, I'll try to guide them for something else that they can do.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you for being an amazing guest on the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast, sharing your journey, your experiences, and also how you've helped other people tap into their best self. Y'all, when you change your thoughts and emotions, you change your biology. Healing begins when you remember your power. This has been another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. Check the show notes for good vibes and value to help you on your healing journey. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're watching the video version. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast distribution platform, make sure you give the show a rating and a follow. Thanks for vibing with me, y'all.